The British Aerospace 125 is a twin-engine mid-size corporate jet. Originally developed by de Havilland and initially designated as the DH125 Jet Dragon, it entered production as the Hawker Siddeley HS.125, which was the designation used until 1977. Later on, more recent variants of the type were marketed as the Hawker 800. The type proved quite popular overseas. More than 60% of the total sales for the aircraft were to North American customers. It was also used by the Royal Air Force as a navigation trainer, as the Hawker Siddeley Dominie T1, and was operated by the United States Air Force as a calibration aircraft, under the designation C-29. Development Origins In 1961, de Havilland began work upon a small business jet, then known as the DH125 Jet Dragon, which was intended to replace the piston-engine de Havilland Dove, a successful business aircraft and light transport. Prior to the start of the project, de Havilland had determined that a successful business jet would require several variables to be met, including a range of at least 1,000 miles, the speed and cost factors of a suitable jet engine to outperform turboprop-propelled competitors, and an engineering philosophy that favored reliability and conventionality. The design team settled on a twin-engine aircraft with the engines mounted on the rear fuselage. The Armstrong-Siddeley Viper turbojet power plant was also selected to power the type. On August 13, 1962, the first of two prototypes conducted its first flight. A second aircraft followed it on December 12 that year. The second prototype was more aerodynamically representative of a production aircraft, and was fitted out with more equipment than the first prototype. The subsequent production standard aircraft incorporated several changes and improvements from the prototypes, such as a longer fuselage and a greater wingspan. The first production standard aircraft performed its first flight on February 12, 1963. The first delivery to a customer took place on September 10, 1964. Production. The aircraft went through many designation changes during its service life. Hawker Siddeley had bought de Havilland the year before the project had started, but the legacy brand and DH designation was used throughout development. After the jet achieved full production, the name was changed to HS.125 except for American exports, which retained the DH125 until it was replaced by BH125 for Beechcraft Hawker. When Hawker Siddeley Aircraft merged with the British Aircraft Corporation to form British Aerospace in 1977, the name changed to BAR 125. When British Aerospace sold its business jets division to Raytheon in 1993, the then main variant of the jet became widely referred to as the Hawker 1000. While the two prototypes were assembled at de Havilland's Hatfield site, final assembly of all production aircraft would take place at the Broughton factory near Chester until the 1990s. By the 2000s, the fuselage, wings and tailfin of the aircraft were still being assembled and partially equipped in the Broughton site, now being owned and managed by Airbus UK. Various sub-assemblies were also produced in Airbus UK's Buckley facility. From 1996 onwards, the assembled sections and components were shipped to Wichita, Kansas in the United States, to undergo final assembly. Writing in 1993, Flying Magazine said of the type in numerical terms, the 125 series is the most successful British commercial aircraft ever built, and the world's longest in production business jet. Production of the aircraft came to an abrupt halt in 2013 due to the bankruptcy of owner Hawker Beechcraft, who has suffered during the Great Recession of the late 2000s, in which demand for business jets had slumped for a number of years. The type had been in production for more than 50 years when manufacturing stopped, during which time over 1,600 aircraft had been produced. In April 2013, the type certificate and support responsibility for all 125s built was transferred to the reformed Beechcraft Corporation. As of October 2012, Beechcraft does not intend to restart production of its business jet lines. Instead, the company intends to alternatively sell or dismantle the production facilities for the 125 family. Design. The DH125 is a low-winged monoplane, powered by two engines mounted on the rear fuselage. The wing is slightly swept, being based upon the larger de Havilland Comet's wing plan form, and employs large slotted flaps and air brakes to better enable operations from small airfields. The aircraft can be flown from hardened grass airstrips. The type has a perfectly cylindrical fuselage with the one-piece wing mounted upon the underside of the fuselage. This design allows for the majority of manufacturing and assembly work of the wing and fuselage to be performed as separate sections, with the two being joined together late in the production process. The wing also houses integral fuel tanks which contain the majority of the aircraft's fuel. Early models of the aircraft were powered by several versions of the Bristol Siddeley Viper turbojet engine, while later aircraft have adopted more recent turbofan power plants such as the Garrett TFE731 and Pratt & Whitney Canada PW300. As well as providing the propelling thrust of the aircraft, each of the engines are connected to independent gearboxes which provide electrical power via generators and drive inboard fuel, oil and hydraulic pumps and a generator for electrical power. The design is redundant so that in the event of a single engine failing, all aircraft systems shall continue to operate normally. All control surfaces of the aircraft are aerodynamically balanced via setback hinges and gear tabs. The flaps and air brakes are operated using the aircraft's hydraulics, while the ailerons, elevators, and rudder are manually actuated. The design of the control circuits allows for an Collins-built AP-103 autopilot to be incorporated. Each aircraft is typically equipped with a de-icing system, which uses a mixture of bleed air from the engines, TKS fluid for general airframe, and AC electric windshield heating to prevent ice formation. From the type's introduction to service, weather radar was incorporated into the aircraft's avionics fit-out. Some operators, such as the Royal Air Force, have equipped their 125s with electronic countermeasures to defend against hostile missile attacks upon the aircraft. The pressurized fuselage was designed to accommodate 2 pilots and 6 passengers. Various interiors were offered for the aircraft. The standard interior offered a high degree of comfort to the passengers. In an executive configuration, the flight desk is separated from the main passenger cabin. The single entrance of the aircraft, located directly behind the cockpit and forward of the passenger cabin, forms a vestibule area in which luggage can be stored and meals prepared during flight. An unobstructed cabin floor with 5 feet 9 of headroom and a 3 feet wide cabin door also allowed the loading of bulky equipment, which was seen as particularly attractive to military operators. In addition to the entrance door, an emergency escape door is also located in the passenger cabin midsection over the wing. The rear of the fuselage is occupied by a large equipment bay and, on some aircraft, 2 additional fuel tanks for extended operations. Operational history: having entered service as one of the first-generation executive jets, the British Aerospace 125 has been operated by a wide variety of customers, ranging from government and military operators to private customers and businesses. It has also seen use by several airlines. Many of the aircraft's customers have been located in North America. In 1990, out of the 650 aircraft then being operated, more than 400 were being flown in the United States. Reportedly, one aircraft was being sold every 7 working days for a substantial period of the type's production life. Successively larger versions were introduced to extend the type's appeal and to better compete against larger jets being used for business travel, such as the Gulfstream 4 and Falcon 900. The Royal Air Force was a significant early operator of the type, receiving a number of aircraft for multiple roles, including some of the first batch of 30 aircraft to be produced. The majority of 125s were operated in an airborne training capacity for Air Force navigators. Aircraft in this role were named as the Hawker Siddeley Dominie. The Dominie served in excess of 45 years before being retired in 2011 due to diminishing requirements. Additional 125s were acquired and operated by No. 32 Squadron RAF as communications and light transport aircraft. These are also occasionally operated to transport Queen Elizabeth II and other members of the British royal family. In the later stages of the war in Afghanistan, Various 125s have been used to transport military officers and other key personnel in and out of the country. As of 2010, the type was scheduled to be withdrawn from RAF service in 2022. It was withdrawn from the RAF in 2015. By the early 1990s, British Aerospace, the manufacturer of the type at this point, had two main variants of the aircraft in production: the smaller 125-800 and larger 125-1000. The 125-1000, which conducted its first flight on June 16, 1990, had several changes to give the type a reported intercontinental range, including the adoption of the newly developed Pratt & Whitney Canada PW300 engine and new digital avionics, such as FADEC following Raytheon's purchase of British Aerospace's business jet division during the 1990s. The two in-production variants were redesignated as the Hawker 800 and Hawker 1000 respectively. The 125 has had the dubious distinction of being the only business jet to have ever been hijacked. In 1967, a chartered 125 carrying the former Congolese Prime Minister Moise Tshom was diverted to Algeria by armed individuals on board. The 125 is also likely to have been the only business aircraft to have ever survived being hit by an air-to-air missile. In August 1988, a British Aerospace 125-800 transporting Botswanan President Kwetmaisaya was struck by a missile which had apparently been inadvertently launched by a nearby Angolan Mikoyangurovic MiG-21. While badly damaged by the direct hit, which resulted in the loss of an engine, the cabin decompressing, and fuel tanks being ruptured. The aircraft was successfully landed by Barra demonstrator pilot Arthur Ricketts. It was later rebuilt. In 2013, the FAA modified 14 CFR Part 91 rules to prohibit the operation of jets weighing 75,000 pounds or less that are not Stage 3 noise compliant, specifically mentioning the 125 series of aircraft. This shall require any aircraft of the type to either have Stage 3 noise compliant engines installed or to be fitted with hush kits, or otherwise will not be permitted to fly over the majority of the United States after December 31, 2015, unless special permission has been granted. Variants: Series 1, first version, powered by 3,000-pound Forces Viper 20 or 520 engines. 9 built, including 2 prototypes long, 44 feet span, and 7 production aircraft long, 47 feet long. Series 1A/1B, upgraded Bristol Siddeley Viper 521 or 522 engines with 3,100-pound forces of thrust each, and 5 cabin windows instead of 6. Series 1A for US FAA certification, Series 1B for sale elsewhere. Series 1A 522 and 1B 522, Series 1 upper bight aircraft with Viper 522 engines. Series 1A R522 and 1B R522, Series 1A 522 and 1B 522 aircraft with long-range fuel tanks, modified flaps and main landing gear doors. Series 1A S522 and 1B S522, some aircraft was structural modified to Series 3 standard but without a change in maximum landing weight or maximum operating altitude. Series 2, navigation trainer for Royal Air Force, with service designation Dominie T1, Series 3 Aries per byte, Viper 522 powered variant with increased weights. Series 3 Aries per Rankine and 3 bytes per Rankine, early aircraft modified to the Series 3 standard but without a change in maximum landing weight or maximum operating altitude and increased fuel capacity with OTL 135 US gallon ventral tank. Series 3 ARA and 3 BRA, Series 1 upper bight aircraft modified to Series 3 standard with structural changes for increased maximum zero fuel weight, maximum ramp weight and OTL 135 US gal ventral fuel tank. Series 3 BRB, variant of the 3 BRA with increased maximum ramp weight and maximum takeoff weight. Series 3 BRC, variant of the 3BRA modified as a navigation aid checker with 4-seat cabin configuration and addition of avionic and flight inspection equipment. F3B, re-engined, F3BRA, re-engined, Series 400, Series 400A and 400B, increased maximum ramp and brake release weights and addition of an outward opening main entry door. From 1970 the Series 400A aircraft for the United States were marketed as the Beechcraft Hawker DH125 Series 400A, Series 401B, increased maximum takeoff and zero fuel weights and alteration to cabin loading. Series 403A, C, the same as a 403B but for use in Canada. Series 403B, increased maximum takeoff, zero fuel and ramp weights, alteration to cabin loading. HS.125 1, British military designation for a Series 400 liaison aircraft for the Royal Air Force, Series 600, Series 600A and 600B, changed to Viper 601-22 engines, increased weights and operating speeds, 3 feet 1 in fuselage stretched to increase capacity to 14 passengers, increased fuel capacity including an additional tank in the dorsal fairing, revised aileron tab arrangements and aileron control gearing and improved aerodynamics. From 1976 the Series 600A aircraft were marketed as the Beechcraft Hawker BH.125 Series 600A, Series 600B/1, Series 600B/2, Series 600B/3, Series F600B, re-engined, HS.125 2, British military designation for Series 600 liaison aircraft for the Royal Air Force, Series 700, Series 700A and 700B variants had the Honeywell TFE 731-3RH turbofan engines with 3,720 pound-forces of thrust each, first flight June 19, 1976. All early models could also be re-engined. BAR 125 3, British military designation for Series 700 liaison aircraft for the Royal Air Force, HS.125 Protector, Series 700 based maritime patrol aircraft with a search radar and cameras, Series 800, BAR 125 Series 800, increased wingspan, streamlined nose, tail fin extension, increased fuel capacity, first corporate jet to feature an EFIS cockpit, upgraded engines, first flight May 26, 1983. Hawker 800, BAR 125-800 after 1993, Hawker 800 XP, variant with TFE 731-5B a 1H turbofan engines with 4,660 pound-forces of thrust each, Hawker 800 SP and 800 XP2, new designation for 800 Aries per byte and 800 XP aircraft when upgraded with aftermarket winglets, Hawker 850 XP, 800 XP with factory-installed winglets and interior updates, Hawker 900 XP, 850 XP with Honeywell TFE 731-50R. Turbofan engines for increased high performance and longer range and modified avionics. Hawker 750-800 XP with a lightweight interior and heated baggage compartment in place of the ventral fuel tank, C-29A, United States military designation for Series 800A for the U.S. military designed to replace the Lockheed C-140A, used by the Air Force to accomplish the combat flight inspection and navigation mission at U.S. airbases around the world, participated in Operation Desert Shield and Operation Desert Storm during the First Gulf War. U-125, Series 800-based flight inspection aircraft for Japan, U-125A, Series 800-based search and rescue aircraft for Japan, equipped with the APS-134LW radar system. Series 1000, British Aerospace BAR 125 Series 1000A and 1000B, intercontinental version of the Series 800, 2 feet 9 in fuselage stretch to increase capacity to 15, increased fuel capacity, Pratt & Whitney Canada PW305 turbofans with 5,200 pound-forces thrust each, first flight June 16, 1990, 52 built, Hawker 1000, BAR 125-1000 after 1994, Handley-Paged HP 130, a 1965 proposal with boundary layer control wings. It was to be powered by 2 Bristol Siddeley Viper 520s of 3,000 pound-forces thrust with a projected maximum speed of Mach 0.8. This conversion was for laminar flow research purposes. Operators equals civil operators equals private operators, air taxi, shared ownership and corporate charter operators worldwide. Between 1965 and 1972 Qantas used two Series 3s for crew training. Numerous 125 aircraft have been privately owned, such as the 125-800 that was owned by Ayrton Senna da Silva, a triple world champion of Formula One racing. Military operators equals Brazil, Brazilian Air Force, Republic of Korea Air Force, Japan, Japan Air Self-Defense Force, Malawi, Military of Malawi, Nigeria, Nigerian Air Force, Saudi Arabia, Royal Saudi Air Force, Turkmenistan, Turkmenistan Airlines on behalf of the government. Former operators equals Argentina, Argentine Naval Aviation operated 1 VIP. See also Esquadra Cube den Far Copyright Nix, Biafra, Biafran Air Force operated 1 aircraft, Botswana, Botswana Defence Force Air Wing, Ghana, Ghana Air Force, Ireland, Irish Air Corps, Malaysia, Royal Malaysian Air Force, Nicaragua, Nicaraguan Air Force, National Guard, South Africa, South African Air Force, No. 21 Squadron SAAF. United Kingdom, Royal Air Force, No. 32 Squadron, No. 55, R, Squadron RAF, No. 6 Flying Training School RAF, Royal Air Force College Cranwell. United States Air Force, Uruguay, Uruguayan Air Force. Accidents and incidents. On November 22, 1966, de Havilland DH125 N235KC of Florida Commuter Airlines crashed into the sea 7.3 kilometers off Grand Bahama International Airport, Freeport, Bahamas during an illegal flight from Miami, Florida. In July 1967, Air Hansen HS.125 carrying former Congolese President Moise Tshombe was hijacked and taken to Algeria. On December 23, 1967 a Hawker Siddeley HS.125 of Ottair International Airways crashed shortly after taking off from Luton Airport, killing both pilots. The aircraft had been on a training flight. The crash occurred when the crew simulated an engine failure on takeoff. The HS-125 lost height rapidly and hit the roof of the nearby Vauxhall Motors factory. This resulted in a post-crash fire. On May 26, 1971, 3 Mercurius HS-125 aircraft belonging to the South African Air Force flew into Devil's Peak, Cape Town, while practicing for a fly-past for the 10th anniversary of the Republic. On November 20, 1975, a British Aerospace Bayer 125 overran the runway at Dunsfold Aerodrome after a bird strike on takeoff. The aircraft hit a car that was travelling along the A281 at the time and stopped in a nearby field, killing 6 people in the car and injuring 1 crew member out of 9 passengers and crew. The aircraft was being flown by the well-known, World War II fighter ace John Cunningham. On June 29, 1983 a corporate HS-125, N125E on a training flight departed Houston Hobby Airport with a simulated engine malfunction and the aircraft drifted left and struck another Grumman trainer aircraft awaiting to cross the runway, killing the 2 occupants in the Grumman. Both aircraft burned. The Hawker pilots escaped unhurt. Probable cause, loss of directional control due to improper supervision by IPNTSB report no. FTW-83FA303B. On September 8, 1987, a Brazilian Air Force Hawker Siddeley HS-125 registration FAB-2129 crashed upon takeoff from Carajás. All 9 occupants died. On August 7, 1988, a Bayer 125 owned by the Botswana government was carrying the President of Botswana, Kwetmasia, and his staff to a meeting in Luanda. An Angolan MiG-23 pilot fired 2 A-60 missiles at the plane. 1 missile hit the No. 2 engine, causing it to fall off the aircraft. The second missile then hit the falling engine. The crew was able to make a successful emergency landing on a bush strip at Kutio Bay. On March 16, 1991, a Hawker Siddeley HS.125-1A charter aircraft carrying band members for Reba McEntire crashed into the side of Otay Mountain. The accident occurred shortly after takeoff from San Diego Brownfield Municipal Airport. All 8 band members aboard plus 2 pilots were killed in the crash, believed to have been caused by poor visibility. On July 31, 2008, East Coast Jet's Flight 81 crashed on approach to an airport in Owatonna, Minnesota, killing all 8 passengers and crew. On October 26, 2009, Air Flight 9607, operated by BA 125 RA02807, crashed on approach to Minsk International Airport. All 3 crew and both passengers were killed. On September 6, 2015, HS-125 of Senegal Air was involved in a mid-air collision with Boeing 737-800 of Serbi Intercontinental Airlines. It is thought that the HS-125 suffered a decompression that incapacitated the flight crew. The aircraft is reported to have crashed into the Atlantic Ocean west of Senegal with no survivors. The 737 made a safe landing at Malabo International Airport. On November 10, 2015, a chartered Raytheon Hawker 700 flying as executive Flight 1526 departed Dayton Wright Brothers Airport and crashed into an Akron, Ohio apartment complex 36 minutes later while on approach to land on runway 25 at Akron Fulton International Airport. All 9 occupants of the aircraft, including both pilots, were killed in the crash. Aircraft on display, United Kingdom, GARYB, Series 1 second prototype is on display at the Midland Air Museum, Coventry, England. GARYC, Series 1 third prototype and first production aircraft is on display at the de Havilland Aircraft Museum, London Coney, England. GASSM, a Series 1/522 is on display in the Flight Gallery at the Science Museum, London, England. XS709, a Dominie T1 is on display at the Royal Air Force Museum, Cosford, Shropshire, England. Specifications. Data from Jane's All the World's Aircraft 1976 a Euro 77, Flight International, General Characteristics, Crew, 2, Capacity, 8 passengers, 14 passengers in high-density layout, Length, 50 feet 6 inches, Wingspan, 47 feet 0 in, Height, 17 feet 3 in, Wing area, 353.0 FTA squared, empty weight, 12,530 pounds, max takeoff weight, 25,000 pounds, power plant, TUA, Rolls-Royce Viper 601-22 turbojets, 3,750 pound-forces each, performance, maximum speed, 522 miles per hour at 28,000 feet, cruise speed, 464 miles per hour at 39,000 feet, stall speed, 96 miles per hour, range, 1,796 miles max fuel and payload, service ceiling, 41,000 feet, rate of climb, 4,900 feet per minute. See also, related development, Hawker 800, Hawker 4000, aircraft of comparable role, configuration and era, Bombardier Challenger 600, Cessna Citation, Dassault Falcon, Learjet 25, related lists, list of active United Kingdom military aircraft, list of aircraft of the RAF, list of military aircraft of the United States. References. Citations Bibliography External links, Hawker Beechcraft official site, Farnborough 2012 Newsday 3 Aviation Week pp 52 Euro 53 tells the history of the 125, photos of this aircraft on airliners.net, Jet Dragon a 1961 flight article.